You see, there's this odd thing that occurs with some folks. They enter a space and pick up on everything, the subtle friction between buddies, the concealed sorrow lurking in a grin, and society often labels it a talent, right? This knack for spotting what slips past others. But today I'd like to propose a contrasting view that this sharp insight could actually be the riskiest trait you might ever hold. I'm not referring to peril in the typical way, mind you, not bodily injury or anything like that. No, I'm pointing to a more insidious and ruinous threat, the peril of growing so attuned that you forfeit the lovely obliviousness that lets most folks navigate life with a measure of tranquility. Ever truly observed people mingling at a gathering? I mean, really studied them. It's all a performance, in a sense. The guidelines are instinctive, never spelled out. You inquire about someone's well-being, and they reply, "I'm good." You both act as if that's the full story. You praise the organizer. You chuckle at quips that barely land. You offer knowing nods to tales retold a dozen times. It's an unspoken pact to skim the surface, to sustain the harmony, to avoid probing too far. Then there's you, the observer who pierces the facade. You catch the spouse who tenses just a bit at their partner's words. You detect the coworker aching with solitude amid a crowd of pals. You sense the unease flowing through the air like a hidden wave. And that's when the real hazard kicks in. Because after you notice those details, they're etched in your mind forever. Even worse, your mere existence turns into a reflection that others dread facing. Allow me to explain. When you grasp the underlying flows in social exchanges with such clarity, you're essentially highlighting what the group has collectively chosen to overlook, and that rubs people the wrong way. Deeply so. Not out of malice or ignorance, but because your insight challenges the framework they rely on to keep going. Picture it like this. Society resembles a theatrical production. Each person plays their assigned role, the thriving executive, the caring parent, the steadfast companion. These are personas, mere outfits we don. The show runs smoothly, as long as actors remain committed to their parts. But you, armed with your incisive perception, are akin to a spectator leaping on stage mid-scene and declaring, Quote 1. You can guess how that goes over. So the initial risk is solitude, not the everyday sort of lacking buddies, but something deeper still, the solitude of inhabiting an entirely alien world compared to those nearby. You're conversing in a dialect no one else speaks. You're witnessing a reality veiled from the rest. And the cruel twist? The sharper your vision, the more isolated you feel. I knew someone once, a woman we'll name Sarah, who possessed this remarkable gift for deciphering individuals. She could step into any setting and instantly discern the authentic from the fabricated, the suffering from the feigned contentment, the reliable from the secretive. And what became of her? She watched all her intimate connections crumble, not due to harshness or bias, but because her company left others feeling stripped bare. They struggled to uphold their reassuring disguises around her. Acquaintances would complain, "You're overwhelming. You overanalyze it all and stir up drama. Why not just unwind and enjoy?" Yet she couldn't switch it off, any more than you could demand silence from someone with perfect hearing. Once that perceptive skill takes root, it's constant, ever active, relentlessly revealing the secrets others wish to bury. And now, the next threat. When you uncover the core of a circumstance, when you detect the true undercurrents, you're confronted with a grim dilemma. Do you voice it or hold back? Speaking up invites backlash, and I'm dead serious, even if it's mostly mental rather than physical. You'll get branded as pessimistic, hypersensitive, a stirrer of unrest. Folks will claim you're inventing issues from thin air, projecting ill intent onto harmless moments, refusing to simply go with the flow. Yet, if you opt for silence, if you suppress your insights and feign ignorance, you start drifting from your own essence. Each instance of dismissing your intuition, of endorsing a distorted narrative you know to be untrue, chips away at your self-trust. Gradually, this fosters an inner divide. One side clings to reality, while the other must act oblivious. It's a subtle form of insanity. I recall several years back, I found myself in a conference room where the team was patting themselves on the back for the supposed success of an initiative, yet I could plainly spot that disaster was looming. The warning signals were obvious all around: the artificial excitement, the dodging of key issues, the way folks' gazes would dart elsewhere whenever tough queries came up. Yet, when I softly proposed that we ought to scrutinize some troubling trends, the response wasn't debate or logical pushback. It was outright antagonism, raw and protective. And that leads straight to the third peril, the sneakiest of them all. When your insight cuts through the fog and others refuse to acknowledge it, they frequently direct their frustration right at you. Not deliberately, maybe. They don't plot to cast you as the bad guy. But instinctively, without thinking, they start viewing you as the source of the trouble, as though your awareness is inventing the very issues you're just noticing. I term this the kill the bearer of bad news effect. When somebody calls out that the king is parading without a stitch on, the audience doesn't applaud the honesty. Instead, they lash out at the revealer for shattering the cozy illusion they'd all been savoring. Your sharp vision turns into a hazard, and hazards get neutralized or reined in. I've observed this cycle play out over and over. The clear-sighted individual ends up tagged with unflattering descriptors, overly pessimistic, stirring up needless conflict, emotionally erratic, in need of chilling out, or suspiciously distrustful. Spot the shared thread in these tags? Each one implies the fault rests with the observer, not the reality being observed. It's a clever shield tactic, in truth. By persuading you that your viewpoint is faulty, they sidestep confronting the substance of what you've spotted. But here's the part no one mentions. The fourth risk might be the most ruinous. When you're always tuning into the moods and concealed realities of those nearby, when you're constantly sensing the unsaid and the unprocessed, you start to blur the lines on what's truly yours. Your personal emotions get tangled with the collective ones. You enter a space in a solid mood and exit drained by sudden unease, sorrow, or irritation without a clue why. And you can't tell if it's originating from you or if you've just sopped it up from the surroundings like a cloth drawing in liquid. The toll is immense weariness. Picture constantly second-guessing which ideas are genuinely yours, forever unsure if the sentiment surging through you is your own or borrowed from the neighbor at your side. It's akin to straining to catch your solo melody amid a chorus of overlapping voices. Over time, you could even lose sense of your unique tone. Folks I've talked to about this often echo the same sentiment. It's like I'm fading away, with bits of me shrinking while the rest of the world expands inside. And this isn't mere metaphor. It's a genuine mental hazard. When the divides between your inner self and the outer world grow overly fluid, when you're ingesting too many vibes without proper safeguards, you risk drifting from your core essence, your sense of who you are. You might wonder. Quote 5. Well, that's where it gets intriguing, since the threat I outline only bites when it's operating below awareness. When you don't grasp what's unfolding, when you assume you're unraveling or inherently broken. But the moment you get the rules of engagement, the instant you recognize that your acuity isn't a defect but a distinct form of perception, the dynamic shifts entirely. Not that the noticing ceases, but your stance toward it evolves. You come to see that you aren't duty-bound to rescue everybody from their blind spots. You don't have to flag every buried fact or mend every ignored glitch. See, the actual menace isn't the perception per se. It's the urge to act on every glimpse you catch. The conviction that spotting an issue means you must resolve it, that detecting hidden hurt obliges you to mend it, that identifying collective glitches demands you set them right. That's where the chaos truly ignites, because you're shouldering burdens that aren't yours to carry. Let me paint a picture for you. Suppose you're strolling past a stream and detect the flow is murky. Your eyes catch it instantly. The other passers-by appear oblivious or indifferent. Now, a decision awaits. You could dive in and attempt to purify it manually, churning it further in the process and wearing yourself out on a futile endeavor. Or you could just register the murkiness, maybe advise holding off before sipping from it, and move along. The stream will settle on its own when the moment's ripe. Your desperate meddling won't aid. It'll only muddy the waters more. This is the insight that needs to pair with keen observation. The UN recognizing that not every insight you gain demands your action is key. Yet, there's this intriguing twist. When you cease the urge to correct every issue in sight, when you ease into pure observation without the drive to alter or dominate, your vision sharpens even further. Beyond that, folks start feeling more at ease in your company since you're no longer subtly pressuring them to match your viewpoint or adjust to fit your insights. Picture it this way: encountering someone who truly gets you, yet doesn't insist on your transformation, who notices your challenges without rushing to save you, who grasps your anxieties without forcing you to confront them on their timeline. Doesn't that bring a sense of liberation? Like you can finally exhale. This is the true potential of sharp perception when handled well. Not as a tool to combat others' unawareness, but as a boon extended via your mere existence. You take them in fully, and through that gaze, you grant them permission to remain just as they are. That doesn't imply endorsing all behaviors or ignoring real issues. It simply means you've quit treating their blind spots as your own mission. Let me emphasize this point. I'm not advocating for detachment or apathy, nor am I urging you to ignore concern for others or avert your eyes from true hardship. Rather, I'm highlighting the gap between empathetic observation and obsessive intervention, between keen insight and assuming ownership over what you notice. The risk in spotting what eludes others isn't in the noticing itself, but in your response to it. Should you wield it to distance yourself, to foster a sense of superiority, or to rationalize your solitude? It indeed turns hazardous. If you deploy it to criticize their lack of vision, to humiliate them for their oversight, or to penalize their unawareness, it surely erodes connections and strands you in isolation. However, if you cradle your insight with ease, if you observe without clinging, notice without manipulating, comprehend without insisting, then your awareness transforms entirely. It evolves into an environment where people can slowly awaken in their own rhythm, on their own terms, free from coercion, prodding, or criticism. From years of observing those gifted with such perceptive abilities, I've come to realize this. The deepest sufferers aren't those with the keenest sight. They're the ones who fail to shield themselves amid their seeing. They soak up everything unfiltered, shoulder every load they detect, and drain their energy attempting to rouse a world unprepared to stir. Those who flourish, who harness their insight without letting it overwhelm them, have grasped a vital lesson. They've mastered engaging with the world without merging into it. They view sharply without drowning in the views. They sense profoundly without dissolving into others' realities. They uphold a deliberate separation, not the chill of retreat, but the safeguard of solid limits. And how does one cultivate this? It begins with carving out solitary moments, genuine ones, beyond mere physical isolation, mental solitude, periods untouched by others' feelings, ideas, or troubles. Time to calm, much like that clouded water we discussed, until you discern which emotions are truly yours and which you've adopted from elsewhere. It builds through trusting your insights without letting them dictate your moves. Sure, you spot your friend's union fraying. Indeed, you detect your coworker's profound discontent. Absolutely, you sense the chaos in your family's dynamics. This might all ring true. But the real query isn't about the accuracy of your sight. It's about your next step with that knowledge. Frequently, in fact, more often than not, the smartest choice is to do nothing but provide room for reality to surface naturally. This isn't inert or heartless. It's sage, rooted in knowing that shifts happen when individuals are prepared, not when you deem it urgent. Issues resolve under favorable circumstances, not on your imposed schedule, and awareness grows at its inherent speed, seldom as swiftly as we desire. So, we've reached the core. The peril of perceiving what escapes others is tangible. It can alienate you, wear you down, invite backlash from their guarded reactions, and sever your link to your inner core. But it needn't. Not if you bear your awareness with intention. Not if you build resilience to observe sans the itch to mend. Not if you stay faithful to your vision while honoring their path to enlightenment. The blessing and the burden are one and the same. The sole matter is whether you'll master wielding the blessing. Possessing that level of insight comes with the risk of it turning into a burden if not handled with care. The question is whether you'll cultivate the tolerance, the limits, and the inner understanding required to express yourself honestly without getting overwhelmed by your own perceptions. And above all, whether you'll connect with those rare individuals who perceive the world just as you do. They're out there. You see, there are others navigating this peculiar realm of noticing what escapes the majority, feeling the concealed layers, grasping the things left unsaid. Once you encounter them, once someone truly recognizes you without demanding you dim your awareness to ease their discomfort, that's the moment the threat starts shifting into something profound and lovely. Because it hits you, you're far from isolated. You're not unhinged, you're not damaged, you're just alert in a society that's largely dozing. Others are alert as well, and collectively, without pushing or demanding or rushing, you can create room for awareness to expand bit by bit, much like the first light of morning easing across a quiet town still at rest. That's the promise tucked inside the risk. Your sharp vision, when nurtured thoughtfully, evolves from a solitary wait into a gentle illumination you share with those around you, giving them time to draw near on their own terms. If they choose to, that is, and if they don't, that's perfectly fine. It's their choice. It's not your role to rouse them. Your role is just to stay vigilant, to continue observing with clarity while figuring out how to coexist calmly with your insights. The risk is genuine, but so is the potential. The potential to embrace awareness without letting it devour you, to gaze profoundly without being pulled under by your discoveries, to hold your perception as a blessing, not a hex. And that, dear ones, is the essence of thriving with open eyes in a realm that often opts for blindness.